So Turning Point gave bad answers to good questions, right? And by Turning Point, I mean Charlie Kirk, who's the face of Turning Point. I've always liked this guy, and so I'm a little confused why he wouldn't just... I think a lot of people have standard thinking. This is probably a very gracious way of putting it, right? A lot of people have very standard thinking, and Republicans have turned more and more like Democrats, right? And here's examples. I have these clips that I took from yesterday's event from Turning Point USA YouTube channel, Culture War with Charlie Kirk and Rob Smith. And Rob Smith is a black, so-called gay, so-called conservative. He actually calls himself a centrist. At Ohio State University, they're doing this tour thing, right, I guess. Streamed yesterday, Tuesday evening. Fleckus Talks also made an appearance at this event. He was trying to interview people outside protesting or something. But he's not in these clips, Fleckus Talks. Nice guy, good guy. Interviewed by Jesse on The Fallen State. Check it out. Rob Smith. Here's Rob Smith. He's that black gay guy that Jesse played the clip of him kind of rehashing what he said to Tucker Carlson amidst all this craziness from the radical homosexuals and radical transgender people. And he calls himself gay, and he's gay, and also he has a husband, and he loves his husband, and he's a gay veteran, and he's gay, and he's gay. And he's also conservative, so-called. Well, here he is in this meeting. He's on stage with Charlie Kirk at this TPUSA type of event. They call itself Culture War with Charlie Kirk. And he does this presentation, little presentation, and then Q&A. So here he is before the Q&A. Rob Smith calls himself a centrist. He's not actually a conservative. Well, he calls himself center-right. And center based on what? What's the center should be the Constitution, right? That should be the center. So all the right, like Jesse would be a centrist, right? I don't know. And so all these other people are way far left. But anyways, here's part A, Joel. Rob Smith calls himself a centrist, a center-right guy.
I'm a centrist at heart. You know, I'm a center-right guy. Being from Akron, Ohio, being from the great state of Ohio, which I'm so proud of, that taught me every value that I have today other than the military. So it was Ohio and the military that taught me these values that I'm really proud of. I believe that we have more in common than we do that separates us.
Whatever. So that's where he stands. I don't like that type of we have more in common than separates us talk, because that's basically trying to join forces with evil people. So here's a man who comes to this event. There's multiple young men that you're going to hear from. And this is a longer clip, a couple minutes long. And he asks a valid question. He asks what, and I bleeped out part of it because it's a little vulgar. He didn't say a bad word. I just thought that it was unnecessary to say this particular word. This man asks how homosexual sex advances conservatism, because here is TPUSA propping up this man, this black man, who is gay and proud and loves his husband. And so how is that advancing conservatism? As giving in to liberalism. So he asked this valid question, and here's their responses too. Listen to this, part B.
We now understand that sexual liberation is political control. It's a form of political control. And you have multiple times advocated on behalf of accepting homosexuality, accepting homosexual acts as normative in the conservative movement. How does sex help us win the culture war?
I'm going to let the gay man answer.
Wait a minute. So can I ask you a question? Can you have the balls to ask the gay man on the stage that question and don't defer to him? Ask me that question. I will answer you that question.
I'm
going to answer you. You already asked the question, so I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to ask you that question. This is America. This is the greatest freaking nation in the world. We realize that America is great because we have Western values. We realize that, let me finish, dude. We realize that gays and lesbians are able to contribute to American society in the same way that everybody else is. And let me tell you, when you continue doing that, okay, you realize that we are here. We are able to do everything. And let me tell you something as well. I served in the military, right? I served 5 years. I did an Iraq tour. What's up?
How does homosexual sex help us win the culture war?
Who said homosexual sex helps you win the culture war?
That's the question that I'm asking. Why are you promoting it?
Well, it's a BS question, and you know it is. It's not. It's a question that is not. It's not a good faith question.
So I'm
it's
gonna
not
be,
a good
honest,
faith question.
Rob, like honestly, I don't care what two consenting adults do. So that's
the whole thing.
And your hyper focus on it is kind of weird. Thanks for being
you
here.
seem to be really interested in gay sex. I'm pretty sure if you're into that, you can go find somebody to do it with. I don't know, maybe. I'm not here to tell anybody what to think or what to believe, but for me, somebody like that doesn't really have any place in the conservative movement because it's something that is so behind the times. And you can boo and you can do whatever you want to, baby, because I'm going to be me, and I'm still here.
Evil. So, valid question, dirty response. And, it's a little bit of a dirty question. And for some reason, I just happened to look at the chat, and this guy, Tion, T-E-O-N, says, Hake is on damage control. What does that mean, Tion? Call in. I don't know what you're talking about. Damage control. Maybe he means because somebody called in about Charlie Kirk and stuff like that, and I was like, you don't need to get into the drama or the hatred of these people? He thinks I'm pro Charlie Kirk. Is that what he's thinking? Tion, call in with what you mean. Anyways, so that was a valid question. It may have been slightly whatever, because he did say, how does anal... I just repeated the word that I bleeped. But I should have bleeped when Rob Smith says, are you going to have the guts? He didn't use the word guts to answer me. But see, they totally gave liberal arguments. Why are you so focused on what they're doing behind the bedroom? If they kept it there, then maybe we wouldn't focus on it because we wouldn't know about it. He said, why are you promoting it? Valid questions. Here's another man asking about Christian morality versus centrists. And centrists just means liberals, to be honest. Part C.
My question is largely directed to Mr. Kirk because you were raised as a conservative. Part of the issue I see here is, what's your name, Rob?
Yeah.
So you're saying, you're behind the times, this isn't conservative. Well, we don't want centrists in the conservative movement. We want to retain our core values.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
We don't want drag.
But here's the thing. It's not about what you want, because here's the thing. The beauty about social media is that I can be me and I can bring myself to the table. And it's not about what you want, it's about what the people want. And if there are enough people in this movement that say, hey, Rob is cool, he's gay, whatever, it really doesn't matter what you think. You can say whatever you want, and you can believe whatever you want to believe.
Let me ask my question.
But it's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. And it's not going to deplatform me.
So my question is, again, it's directed to Mr. Kirk because he was raised as a conservative. As the guy before has said, you've advocated for homosexuality, said that there's a place for the gay agenda within the conservative movement. My question is, and you're also comfortable with transgenders and cross-dressers, I understand. So my question is there any point where conservatives should take a moral stance on Christian morality, or should we abandon it altogether? So in other words, what is what is your brand of conservatism doing to actually conserve Christian morality? If we're ceding to the left on transgender, gay rights, gay marriage, we don't want that in conservatism.
So you don't want him in the conservative movement? I just want to be very clear. Let's just be... Rob.
So you don't want me in the movement?
No.
Not if it waters down...
Hold on a second.
No, we don't.
I want to be very clear.
We don't need to compromise our fundamental beliefs.
Hold on a sec. You're bringing some very charged language. I'm going to try to calm down the temperature in the room, so I can try to rationally understand an irrational position.
Why should we
Let me finish.
compromise our fundamental beliefs?
Let me finish. So, I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible is the greatest book ever to exist in the history of the world. And I believe Rob Smith has decency and dignity as an individual in the United States of America. Hold on a second. We're not a theocracy. We never have been.
And you know what? And wait a minute. Let me hop in here. Hold on, because I'm in it.
Really
He's addressing me.
answers.
The thing that I don't understand. Well, I'm addressing you. How about
You
that?
don't even have the courage to address the gay man on stage.
So The problem that I have with, as somebody that is a gay Christian, and this is the problem that I have,
No such thing.
because my relationship with God and coming back into the church over the past year and a half is one of the greatest gifts that has been given to me in terms of being in this movement. So my question to everybody who tries to say that, oh, you shouldn't be, Christian because you're gay, why are you trying to turn people away from God? So if you love God
Totally
and
twisted.
Christianity is so right, because I do love
Trying to
God,
turn you away from
so why
homosexuality.
would you be trying to turn me away? Why would you be trying to turn me away from God?
So we're going to get
And another thing, and one thing
We're
that
gonna
I
get to the
don't
next
do,
question.
and one thing that I don't do is that there is no man that is of this earth that is going to tell me what God has for me and how much God loves me. So
Ain't no man
goodbye.
gonna tell
Thank
me
you
what
for
to
your
do.
question.
So I think I get what Tion was coming from, because Smolsnek says Hake was defending Charlie Kirk the other day. I don't think I was defending him. First of all, I don't pay attention to these people. So this is my first time seeing Charlie Kirk in action. I didn't even know what his voice sounded like. But I was defending not hating people, because a lot of people are hating these guys. And once you hate evil, you're part of the controlled opposition too. And anybody with anger is controlled opposition, because anybody with anger is controlled. But you're right. Do not accept it as a norm. And that's what they're. It's so dishonest. Their response is pretty evil, to be honest. So there's this and somebody's like bringing up, oh, am I gonna play the questions about Israel? I didn't understand those as much. Those weren't as good of questions. Maybe I can deal with them later. You can call in about it. But anyways, a young man points out that whites, I'm going to play one clip and then I'm going to get to calls and I'm going to play the rest of the clips, hopefully. A young man points out that whites are the only ones as a majority voting Republican. And it's especially white men, right? And so he brings up the fact that whites are rapidly becoming a minority. And they are already amongst the young people. So here's that. Very interesting question.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau population projections, in 2045, whites will account for less than 50% of the population in the United States. Given that the Democratic Party's policies do not point towards the maintaining of our American ideals, and given the most groups other than whites overwhelmingly vote Democrat, how can we be sure that said American ideals will be maintained when millions of immigrants come in with majority Democratic support? Can you prove that our white European ideals can be maintained if the country's majority is no longer made up of white European descendants? If
right.
not, should we
I'm
support
not
mass
applauding.
legal
Let me
immigration?
finish. Okay, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. All right, let me answer, I guess, your question with my perspective. I've been asked this a couple times in the last week and a half. Let me tell you my stance on immigration, then I'm going to tell you where I think you go terribly wrong with your question, okay? I think that we should embrace Senator Tom Cotton's RAISE Act, which is to lower the amount of legal immigrants into our country, but increase the merit base that we let people to come into our country. End the visa lottery, end chain migration, make English the official language of the United States, build the southern border, and restrict the amount of flow of border jumping and line cutting to come into our country. But I'm always perplexed by this argument I'm always interested by this argument, like, oh, how are we going to maintain our white status? So let's play out that racist idea. And all of a sudden we let a bunch of French people in our country. No, let's
a caricature of his. He didn't say
let's play
that.
that idea. We let a bunch of German or French people who are all socialist and hate our values. The insinuation of your question is that somehow race and ideology are intertwined together. President Donald Trump has been wrongly accused of being a racist president. Do you know that President Donald Trump received more support in the Latino and the black community than John McCain and Mitt Romney?
Because he's real.
Combined.
I will also say
Combined.
that it is a failure of the conservative movement to not be able to communicate to communities in the black community, which I believe the black community is an inherently conservative community, a community that is around the ideas of the Judeo-Christian tradition. It is a pro-life community. It's a hard-working community. And so to reject your premise that, oh, how are we going to keep the white status of this, I find that to be a racist question. I reject the idea behind it. I do not think America should become a white ethno-state as a country. In fact, I think that is a fringe perspective I appreciate you being here, and I'm going to rationally push back against it every single time I come in contact with it. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it.
So that was a realistic question. The young man has a realistic concern, and we all know that whites tend to vote conservative, and the whole rest of the POCs, for the majority of them, don't. And it's not even a good majority of the whites. It's like a declining majority of the whites who support conservatism. But it's still a majority. They're the only people, especially the white men, who tend to be conservative or for what's right, for what's sane. And racism doesn't exist, Charlie. So don't be falling for that stuff. But he's representative of the typical rhino stuff that you see in Congress. So he's like very typical of so-called Republicans nowadays. Remember, those Republicans voted to censure, what's his name? Steve King, Congressman Steve King out of Iowa. Republican who wanted to preserve Western civilization. And he's like, how did that become so-called offensive and tied up with so-called white supremacy? Dumb. And they censured him for it because they thought that he was defending so-called white supremacy. Stupid. Anyways, I'm going to get to some more about how long till drag shows start becoming the norm amongst conservatives, because look at how much these people have surrendered in terms of their values. And that Asker was so right. And Charlie Kirk brings up Asians as though Asians are good to have in this country just because they're successful and less violent. It's not a good reason to bring them in because they vote Democrat. They support Obama. They hate whites. They fall for the anti-Christian stuff. We don't need to be bringing them in just because they're successful, skilled, and not violent. Let me quickly play this. I think I'm on E. Am I on E? Let's go for it.
I'd like to know, how long do we have to wait until child drag shows are pushed as American traditional conservatism?
Seriously.
Let me answer. I'm going to answer
Good
that question. So, I get a lot of crap, and I've been getting a lot of crap from people in this room about being a gay conservative. And let me be very clear right now. No, you're not. But okay, that's great.
What are you
but
conservative?
He served in the United States military. That's what he conserved, my friend.
How about I
conserve
in the
anything?
military while you're a coward and you go to the front of the line?
How about
he
I
went
conserve
through
this
Iraq to
country,
protect
dude?
our freedoms
How about
while
I
you
conserve
go up
this
talking
country,
about
dude?
conserving our country.
Your freedoms when I was
They didn't
fighting in
conserve
Iraq
anything.
for you. How about
No.
that?
That's not true.
Is that a good enough answer about what I conserved? So let me be clear, because I want to address what he's saying, because I think that there's a valid point in what he's saying, even though what he's saying is crap.
Crap.
So there's this idea that there's a lot of crap going on in the far, I call it the LGBT alphabet soup left, that myself as a gay conservative is like pushing back on. The child drag queen stuff is garbage, okay? The drag kid stuff is garbage. Trans kids is garbage, okay? And so I get crap from the right for being a quote-unquote fake conservative, and I get crap from the left when I stand up against that stuff and say that we need to calm that stuff down because it is not doing anything for America. As a matter of fact, I think that child drag queens and I think that trans kids, quote-unquote, are destructive to the fabric of this country. I absolutely
Destructive to
believe
the
that.
kids.
So not to address a troll, but I need to say, as a gay
It's a
conservative,
valid question, not a troll.
myself and the Ricky Rebels of the world and the Scott Pressers of the world, we're the only ones in that community that are standing up against that crap and calling it for what it is. So if you don't think that you need us in the movement, these people on the left, the alphabet soup is going to do a lot of crazy stuff, and we need to pull them back in line, period. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
So listen, man, about what this guy just said. I blanked on what he said. First of all, he spoke with no authority. He can't you don't need gays to speak out. You don't need blacks to speak out against blacks. You can be a white man speaking out against that. You can be a straight person. You can be a Christian speaking out against the LGBT. You don't need the so-called LGBT to criticize itself. He said, we need to calm that stuff down, guys. That's weak. He's not going to make any impact. We need men to make impact, like real men, not like him. So, and calling him a troll, that was a valid question. Let me quickly get to this last soundbite. Play it. It's the last one, right, Ev?
In the wake
Go
of
for
the
it.
student debt crisis, stagnant wage growth across all education levels in all fields, liberal arts, STEM, how is regurgitating this far-left talking point of stapling green cards to diplomas America first? How is this any different than chain migration funded by taxpayers through the NSF, DOE, DOD? Those
Okay,
funds go
so,
to...
Yeah, I'm happy to elaborate on it. So I said at a speech last week that if someone graduates from a four-year college, they should have a green card stapled to their diploma. Let
Bad
me
idea.
elaborate on that further. I don't think it makes sense as America First to invest our tax dollars in foreign nationals that come to our own publicly funded universities and then say go back and compete against us in Korea, Japan, or
Don't let them in
Southeast
the
Asia.
first place then.
Well, so you just said they're competing against us here. Well, actually, if they're employed by American companies or they're entrepreneurs, there's evidence to show that they actually embrace our American cultural identity
No,
and
they
come
don't.
and they immerse into our country. So I'll give you a great
become
example.
liberals.
So you look at, I'll give you a great example.
Asians.
The same sort of skepticism, the same sort of hostility was given towards Asians in the 1940s
Liberals.
and 50s. Asians have been one of the most productive, one of the most amazing communities, least likely to commit crimes, most contributing communities to our country,
Liberals.
including
Also the
Indian
wealthiest.
Americans, people from Southeast
Wealthy
Asia.
and anti-white.
And so I will say this. Look, I'll nuance it even further.
Anti-Christian,
and a green
too.
card is not citizenship. I did not say citizenship. There's a huge difference there. But if you
I don't care.
graduate from Stanford, MIT, Yale, and you're able to find a job that needs to be filled by an American employer, then yes, I do believe you should be given temporary residency to be able to fill that job. And guess what? You pay taxes. You're within the system.
Anyways, I plainly disagree with him on that too. It's not, we don't need smart foreigners coming in and then competing with Americans. It's dumb.